And we are live. G'day everyone, Mike Jeffrey here, and you are listening to My Creative Journey, episode number 29. To all you new listeners out there, hello and thank you so much for taking the time to stop by here today. As I said, my name is Mike and I'm a wedding photographer from Sydney, Australia. Each week on the show, I bring you guys along on the highs and lows of my own creative journey and share all the knowledge that I've gained along the road to building my own freelance business. This week, I have a confession to make, and that is that I'm not perfect. Despite what you may see online, my life is not always that productive, and I actually fail far more than I would like to admit. In this episode, I want to discuss the highlight reel that is Instagram and come clean on a few things that I've been reflecting on recently. I want to be very real and raw today, so I hope this episode makes for good listening, but I guess only time will tell. But before we do that, let's talk about what has been going on for me this past week. And I don't want to discuss it too much, but as people would know, our lockdown in Sydney got extended last Wednesday after I recorded last week's episode. So we're in lockdown for another month, as we were expecting to be in lockdown for quite a while. But I think it's still hard to be able to hear that sort of news when you were used to being in life as usual. I think it was very tough towards the end of June there to realise that we had to go back into lockdown when we had been out for so long and had been enjoying so many freedoms, to now be locked away and not know when the end will be. I think that's the hard part. Not having an end in sight is very tough. And so that was one of those things that when the end date does get set and then it keeps getting moved back, it's hard to sort of plan and hard to push anything and hard to mentally prepare yourself for what is ahead when you don't know how long there is to go. One of the negative things that did come along with that was the wedding that I was shooting on the 14th of August has now been postponed. So that's been moved till next year. And so that has been fairly hard, I suppose, on me, because I was, one, really looking forward to it. But I also really feel for the couple who were getting married and for them not being able to have their special day in the way that they would have liked to. And they're obviously working through all different sorts of things on how they can get married before then, or if they do have any other options. And I think that is super tough and something that I've definitely been thinking about in business, especially in people having to postpone and what my procedures are and what the processes are. As you guys may know, I'm not actually missing out on any money for actually photographing this wedding. I spoke about it probably way back in the beginning of this podcast, where I started in my wedding photography. I really put a call out to offer my services for free for the first few, and these guys were one of the ones that I was going to take photos for their wedding for free. So I'm not missing out on any money here. This is not a financial thing, but it's really annoying for me because it was something to try and build my portfolio and something that I was looking forward to having early on in my career, I guess, having only just started in this in April in this year, and having this one lined up for August fairly early in the season. Not many people get married June, July, so August was the first one, and having that sort of experience there ready to go, I think having that pushed back really sort of sets me back in my business a little bit, but also, yeah, I'm very disappointed for the other guys in not being able to be married, being someone in that position of planning their wedding at the moment, knowing the stress that does come along with that and the stress of having to plan alternatives for if things do come up like this. And this is never something that people would have had to think about in the past, but such is the day that we do live in. So, yeah, it's been tough, but I think we're all going to keep moving on and hopefully we are able to come back to some sense of normalcy next month, but we are still not sure. So I'll keep you guys updated, but I'm sure you're already right across it and I don't want to touch on it too much more. Another interesting thing that I've been working on this week has been my 2023 price guide, which is something that I didn't think I'd have to be working on this far in advance, but it certainly is in an industry where I do get booked a long way in advance, and I want to be able to open up my books for 2023 probably in September, October. So being able to work on that price guide early on and being able to set my prices for the end of 2023 is a fairly daunting process, because not only will that mean that I can accept people and actually book them in that far in advance, so then I have to be secure that I will be there to actually do that work in 2 years' time, but also the fact that I'm being able to set my prices for 2 years from now, right now. And based on experience that I have now, it's hard to forecast where I'll be in 2 years. So trying to forecast pricing like that is a very challenging thing, especially in the early years where I'm not sort of experienced enough to say that I'm not going to change much in the next 2 years, because I think there will be a lot of growth in the next 2 years. I certainly hope so. I hope that I improve really beyond sight, and I hope that I go past what I actually expect for myself. So having to set those prices and going above and beyond what I think is reasonable especially for people who are thinking of, if you're booking me now, I don't want to then turn around in a year's time and up my prices again, so that if you booked me earlier, then you would have necessarily got me at a cheaper price. I want to sort of make it as fair for everyone as possible, and I don't want to be saying that just because you booked earlier means that you get a cheaper price, even though your actual wedding date is after someone that may potentially book the end of next year. So I don't want that to be the case, and trying to plan for what my prices are has been interesting, because looking back on what my prices have been, I've definitely been undervaluing myself, but I did that strategically, and I've spoken about that on the podcast before, especially like working for free. That's a strategic move where I'm 100% undervaluing myself and my services there, but I'm not undervaluing my time, because I think that I'm trying to get that experience and trying to get a portfolio so that I can then build up. And I think it is an exponential growth in the amount that I can charge, as opposed to someone who's just increasing by $100 a year or increasing by a certain amount every year. I think for me, it is going to be exponential. So I might be like 2 times the price next year and 3 times the price the year after. So I'm able to sort of grow at that sort of rate. So planning for that has been interesting. And I did actually have an inquiry last week for someone wanting to actually book me in for 2023. And I had to sort of sit back and think, I don't have my prices yet, and I haven't actually opened my books yet. So that's fairly reasonable just to say to them, haven't opened my books yet. I'm happy to exchange emails and still have a chat, and I'd really like to get to know what they're about, but haven't opened the books yet, and as soon as I do, I'll get back to them. So that's been sort of speeding up that process, because I certainly want to be able to provide that for people when they do inquire. I can't really say there's been much more going on this week, but the other thing that I did want to touch on was something that I spoke about last week, and that was my editing hour. So if you guys didn't listen to last week's episode, I was talking about how I was putting in place an hour a day through the week, at the start of the day, and an hour, and only an hour, so no less, no more, to actually sit down and work on my editing. So just editing photos and other old images and things like that. And this was a big part of me trying to improve my skills and trying to give myself time to work on my craft and actually practicing. I think that's something that we, as artists in any form, I think, understate the importance of practice, and we don't necessarily put the hours in that we should be. I think in the beginning it's easy to put hours in because you're sort of really hungry to get out there and work, but when you move into the end stages, when you move into a more professional stage of your career, you find it hard to sort of sit down and do that sort of work. And I'm trying to put routine in place, because I think that's one of the biggest things that has helped me and has benefited me in the past, has been putting routine in place that I'm able to do this sort of work. I think describing it as just art and without actually working, I think goes away from what I'm trying to do here. This is a career for me, and I want to be able to be as strenuous in this career as any other sort of career. So being able to plan and actually put things in place so that I can be productive in this type of work has been always a priority for me and at the forefront of everything that I try to do. So putting this hour in at the start of the day has been very beneficial over the past week, and I've really noticed that I've been enjoying it, but also it has been helping me to be able to continue growing those skills, because as I said last week, I sit down and I continue the work that I did yesterday. I'm continuing on. I'm constantly moving because I know what I have to come and sit down to. I'm not just sporadically coming and sitting down whenever inspiration strikes. I'm trying to create inspiration within the time that I'm there. So by having that repetition, I get used to, in the morning, that is when I sit down and do my best work. So hopefully inspiration will strike whilst I'm there and whilst I'm trying to do that work. And so far, so good. And I've been really enjoying that process. And I'm going to try to continue that up for as long as I can, especially in lockdown at the moment. There's not much else that really demands my attention early in the morning. So trying to get that hour in and trying to get as much work done in there as possible has been really helping, and really helping me really practice my work in a time where I can't actually go out and take photos. The next best thing for me to do has been to sit down at the computer and actually work on editing photos. So that has been really productive, and I will let you guys know how that goes, because I think it is a procedure that I'm going to continue to put in place and hopefully implement for other things that I do in business as well that may not see the amount of time being put into them as I should be. The other thing that I spoke about last week was dry July and how I had given up coffee for the whole month of July. So that actually ended on Saturday. So I'm very glad to be back on coffee now, and probably why I feel like I've got more energy on today's podcast, because it was a very tough month to have to go through, especially being in lockdown and not having much energy and being fairly drained as it was, being stuck inside and being very limited on the things I could do, not being able to have my cup of coffee every day, which is something that I really enjoy. It's not something that I use as a drug. It's something that I actually really enjoy and I actually put a lot of time into actually making coffee and sort of the art and the skill around that. So that is something that I really enjoy. So being able to get back to that really helped and has really sort of lifted my energy a little bit more, because it's one of those things, as I said, I like to have that sort of structure in my day. So that is one of the things that I used to do in the morning, but when I took that away, it sort of, the rest of the morning sort of started to fall away, because what do I do and in which order do I try to do it? So that has been really nice to be able to finish that. And I want to let you guys know that I've raised $203, I think, which was really amazing, especially through this whole situation where we are in lockdown and people are out of work and things like that. So they haven't been able to have money to be able to just throw at different sorts of charities and things like that. But I was really glad to be able to, one, create awareness. I think that is a big thing, especially in this. I think that is one of the reasons why I did go into it. It wasn't necessarily to raise thousands and thousands of dollars, because I don't have the platform to do that. But I think that with my audience, it's definitely about creating awareness and showing people that this is a thing and there are other things happening out there in the world. And I think we've tended to forget about that this year with the pandemic and everything going on, that we've forgotten that there are still other diseases out there in the world that are still impacting a lot of people's lives. So that was great to be able to create that awareness, and I'm glad that I was able to do that. And I think we'll be back again next year, hopefully in a stronger position where we can sort of drive and hope to raise a bit more money for those types of things going forward. And then finally, the last thing I want to touch on before we jump into today's topic is actually a little thing that I've been working on over the past week. It was an idea that I had probably 2 weeks ago, and I've spoken about it on this podcast before. I think, I'm not sure what episode it was, probably 11 or 12. I think I spoke about my print store. Now, I've been working on actually relaunching my print store over the past week, and this is something that I was unsure whether I wanted to do it. I've spoken about it on the podcast before about how unsuccessful it was last time, but I think unsuccessful in generating an income, but not unsuccessful in the actual lessons that it taught me. And I think I've taken a lot away from it, and I'm going to use a lot of those things that I learned last time in restructuring the way that I actually go about launching this print store. So I'm very excited for what that will hold in the future and how successful that can be, and how I can sort of maximize what I'm able to do with that without having a lot of input. So I'm going to speak about that probably next week. I don't want to touch on it a lot, but I just wanted to bring it up and sort of have this as a little precursor to what I'm going to touch on next week, and really keep your eye out if you're interested, or if you're listening to this episode in the future, keep an eye out for when that print store actually launches and see some of the things that I implement in that. And I'll definitely speak about it again on the podcast, but I just wanted to bring it up here just to flag that, and something that I think you guys probably will be interested in when it starts. And so with that all out of the way, let's jump into today's topic, which you heard me speak about in the intro, but it's all about how social media is a highlight reel. And I really want to touch on this. I don't want to delve into social media too much, and I've spoken about it in the last few episodes, and I'm getting a little bit over speaking about that, but this is probably more inward reflective sort of episode where I want to touch on a few things, and I really want to be open and honest with you guys about a lot of things, because over the past week and over the past probably month or so, I've been getting a lot of messages and sort of hearing from a lot of friends and other people on social media. A lot of people reach out to me and say, how are you able to be so productive? And people will often say that to me, and people will often come out and say that they're always impressed by the amount of work that I'm able to do, or impressed by the amount of things that I'm able to accomplish. And I kind of take a back seat to that, because I don't necessarily see that within my own life, but clearly someone else sees that, and clearly people are perceiving me to be that way. And so I wanted to touch on it today, because I know a lot of people have brought it up before, and I know that this is generally something that I would perceive of other people, and I know that we all have our different levels of what we think is being productive, and other levels of what we think is successful. So I want to really speak about it today, and sort of use this platform to sort of unhinge some of those myths that you will see on social media, because it is such a highlight reel. It's really one of the big downsides with social media, is that you only ever see the good stuff. No one posts the bad stuff that goes on in their day, because that really wouldn't be interesting. If I was here posting about how many times I was unable to record the podcast, or how many times I had to stop, and how many times that I find this hard, and all the times where I'm sitting down to try and write ideas for an hour and I don't actually come up with any ideas for the podcast. And if I really posted about that wouldn't make for very enjoyable content. But also, the types of images people post are never going to be images where they inherently look bad, because people have this bias of themselves where they don't want to make themselves look bad online, and I totally get that. I totally get that you wouldn't be out there to try and put yourself down, and no one really wants to see that, and that's not going to be something that inspires other people. So in that way, you're trying to build that audience of people who are inspired by your work and who really resonate with you. I've really had to reflect on that because sometimes I think it's important to be able to post those sorts of things. Of course, you should be posting and celebrating your successes and everything that you achieve and the small little wins that you have through the day. I think that is super important to put those out there. But first off, we've got to ask ourselves, why are we actively wanting to put that stuff out there? Why is that something that you want to put out there, and why is that not something that you're just celebrating with yourself? But then second of all, why aren't we putting out the sort of small little failures as well? You know, these are things that everyone probably goes through in their day-to-day life. So it's not like they're unrelatable. It's just that we don't want people to know those sorts of things. I myself have noticed that me recently have been posting a lot of stories and a lot of different things that I'm up to through my day. It sort of stems back to something that I aimed to do at the start of the year. It was one of the sort of things that I had as a sort of New Year's resolution, I guess you could say, where I wanted to be able to post more of myself on my Instagram, for example. So I was trying to post more stories throughout the day and sort of update everyone who is following along on my life and sort of give a general update, because first of all, I like it as something to look back on, and I like to be able to share that with friends and family who I may not have as much contact with. And I think that's a good conversation starter when you do sort of meet someone and they've already known what you're up to. So that is a great thing. But also, I think it was a way to sort of build my personal brand. And that was something that I sort of set as a goal, to be able to build some sort of personal brand, sort of put myself out there a bit more and show more of my life than I normally would. And it's not something that does very much come naturally to me. It's something that I really struggle with, to be able to put so much of myself out there online, because most of the time it doesn't come easy, and it's never, the first instinct isn't to drag out my phone and sort of take a photo or a video of something that I'm up to. That never really comes first. So I've had to sort of condition myself in a way that I have been able to do that over the past sort of 6 months or so, where I'm now sort of comfortable recording things or taking photos of things and sort of updating you guys on my life, and especially things around work. I think that's really nice, and being able to put that out there and show you guys what I'm up to through the day, because being able to see behind the scenes is really nice. But I think it's sort of fed into this highlight reel in that I only ever post the good things nowadays. I don't sort of post just any old sort of photo. I don't just post random little things that I'm up to where I may not be succeeding through the day, or things where I'm just on the lounge just watching TV or eating chocolate, or you know, how many breakdowns I have over things that I'm not able to do, how much things stress me out through the day. I don't post about those type of things anymore, because they're not the things that I enjoy posting. You know, I really enjoy posting all my successes, but I've got to sort of reflect on that and think, why is it that I don't like posting other types of things? And why is it that I'm trying to make myself look like this type of person, when anyone would know that everyone has some sorts of failures in their life, and only portraying yourself in a way that you only succeed, I think, is wrong and should never be something that you strive for. And it's not something that I've actively tried to do. I think it's just something that's naturally happened over time. And I think that is the impact of social media, that you are made to only be that way. And that's how other people are interacting with this stuff. And that is how people like to see. So if you're feeling good about it and other people are enjoying it, then why not keep posting that sort of stuff? But I have to sort of come back on that and say, maybe if I just put some bad stuff out there, people would feel more connected to me. Maybe people would enjoy that more because it's real and it's helping me, but it's also helping them as well. And I think being as real and raw as I can is a good thing. And that's what I'm going to try to do today on this podcast, but then also moving forward. And it's going to be a bit of an exercise and a bit of a challenge for me moving forward into this month. It really hit me last weekend when, I think it was on Sunday afternoon, I was sitting down to read a book and I was in bed reading, and all of a sudden I had the urge to actually take my phone out and actually take a photo of me reading. Now, this has nothing to do with me reading. This has nothing to do with how much I enjoyed the content that was in the book. I wasn't trying to share anything from the book. There was nothing there that I was trying to say, wow, that's really great information. Let's share that up. I think this is a great book. People should read it. That had nothing to do with that. All that stemmed from, once I reflected on it, was the fact that I wanted to show people that I was reading. Now, why do people care that I'm reading? They probably don't care at all. They probably just swipe past that, for one. But two, why would I want to show that as something that I am trying to do on a Sunday afternoon? You know, if it not be just to prove that I'm trying to be productive with my Sunday afternoon, or that, wow, have a look at me, I'm such a good person for reading a book on a Sunday afternoon. And I think immediately once I did that, I had this big moment where I was like, wow, I've never realized that that is something that I do a lot. But if I look back, and a lot of the different things that I do post on social media, especially on my stories, are things like that. There are multiple things that could happen that could be perceived in that way. And no wonder other people think I'm so productive. If I'm posting a photo of me reading a book every day, they probably think I read a lot of books, but I may only be there for like a minute or two. That may not be the extent of it. I may not actually be digesting anything from that book because I'm too busy focused about how I'm actually going to take the photo to post on Instagram. So that had me really wondering, and that's really why I wanted to speak about it today, because it made me question, why do we actually do things? Why am I posting these sorts of things? And why do we even do things in the first place? Like, why was I even reading that book? It sort of hit me to the point where I had to really reflect on everything that I did. And so I sort of wrote those ideas down, but then I really wanted to convey them on this podcast, and I hope you guys actually gain something from this. So the first question that I really was asking myself was, why do I do things? And why do I do all the specific things that I do in my life? And why do I enjoy them? Or if they're not something that I enjoy, why do I continue to do them? So there's a few things that I really enjoy trying to do in my life, and a few of those being like self-improvement, being able to learn stuff, being able to read books, being able to learn, being able to listen to podcasts, audiobooks, all that type of thing, and communicating with other people and hearing experience. I think that is that sort of self-improvement and sort of personal development in actually learning things. And I like to learn from a vast variety of different sort of topics and things like that. And I like to be able to learn. And why do I enjoy doing that? Well, I think that I enjoy that because it actually expands my perception on the world. It expands the amount of things I know. It expands the conversations that I can have with people, but also expands my understanding of a lot of different things. I think it's been a practice of mine to sort of improve myself in that area as much as possible and sort of learn about a lot of different things, whether that be with my sort of finances, whether that be with how I should go about my day with sort of my productivity things and whether I should be reading or meditating or exercising and things like that, and how I should be sleeping and eating and all those things. I'm trying to learn what the best procedure is. And I think I've been a big experimenter over the years in trying to do things and just experimenting, because I know that there's no one size fits all for everyone, and no one can sort of do everything the same way and get the same results. Everyone has a personalized way that they should do things. So I believe in experimenting, and I believe in sort of taking your own path on things and trying things out. And just, if you hear about something, why not just hand it a go for a month and see if you enjoy it? And then if you do, you can continue on from there. So that's that sort of active learning that I like to take on. But then again, some things that I'm trying to actively show that I'm learning, maybe they're not things that I'm interested in. Maybe it's just to be able to show that I'm into this type of thing. Isn't that so strange? You've never heard of it, so that people will think that maybe I'm more interesting than they are. You know what I mean? So I have to reflect on those types of things and whether I'm trying to do those for the right reasons. And I think for most of the self-improvement part, I think I am, because I do most of that in sort of silence. I don't sort of speak about a lot of the individual little things that I do, because I really enjoy those and I really gain a lot. I think in experiences where I do gain something, I try to share it with as many people as possible, but then it's me sharing it so that they can then go experiment with that type of practice in their own life. The other big thing I like is exercising, and I've always seen that as a sort of self-improvement, self-development type of things, because exercise and any type of health, like whether it is eating and that sort of diet and sleeping and that sort of stuff, I sort of blanket that in with self-improvement as well. And I've always enjoyed exercising, and I sort of post about that a lot as well. But I do that mostly out of enjoyment, and I really enjoy exercising. Of course, there's times when it gets hard, but I really do enjoy that, and I strive to be able to do that as well. Those are the reasons why I do things, and there are other reasons why I do things like record this podcast or in my business and things like that. And there's definitely sort of financial reasons behind a lot of things that I do. And I would be blind to say that there's no financial reason behind anything, because we need to be able to earn some sort of money in our life to continue on. And we need to be able to be fairly compensated for work we do. So we want to be able to do things that allow us to have that compensation. And if that is some sort of financial gain, then that is great, because it allows us to live our lives. So reflecting on things that I do just for financial gain or things that I do for enjoyment, I think is super important, because it allows you to sort of create that divide between things that you enjoy and things that you only do for a job. And then the other big reason I do things is to help others. There are definitely parts of my job, there's definitely parts of me recording this podcast that I like sitting down here because I like speaking to you guys. And I think that you guys enjoy hearing experiences that I've had, and I like to educate on things. The whole reason behind starting this podcast was because I couldn't find many podcasts or couldn't find many resources from people who are starting a business. So I wanted to give a ground up experience and sort of show you guys how the step-by-step sort of played out. And for me, being able to look back, it'll be a great thing to look back on in a couple of years, but also for new people starting, it'll always be there as, here is my journey from starting, because I didn't start this a year into starting my business. I started this before I even went into wedding photography. So showing that sort of growth over the past couple of months has been really nice, because I think it's allowed other people to actually learn from this, and it's helped other people as well. There are things in my business like being able to go and take photos. I'd love being able to go and give that to someone else, give the actual gift of photography to other people. I think it's something that a lot of people miss out on through it being too expensive or through not being educated enough to know that they need it. And being able to give that as a gift to other people, I really enjoy that as well. So there are definitely things that I like to do to help other people, and sort of knowing what category it is trying to fit into and why you do things, I think is important, and something that I've definitely been reflecting on over this past week, to be whether it is something to help me, to help others, or to help me in some sort of financial way as well. So whether it's improving me mentally, improving me physically, or improving my financial status, I think knowing what the reason is behind why you do things, I think is super important in understanding that in what then the next step is, in that why do we actively try to show that we do things. So obviously, as I've said, I like to post about things on Instagram and on my stories a lot, and I like to be able to share things that I try to do. Now, reflecting on first step, why I do things, I think that's important. If you're trying to do things for no reason at all, then if you don't enjoy something, probably don't try and do it in the first place. But after we come past that hurdle, why do we then sort of post about things at all? Is it to help other people? Is it to try to educate and try to sort of repay that favor? Or is it just a sort of vanity thing where we're posting just to make other people feel like we're some sort of impressive person who always does all these things and trying to impress other people and make them feel like they're below us because we're a lot better than they are? Definitely in the beginning for me, one of the big reasons behind why I started to post about things that I do in my life is because I think that I'm interested in a lot of different things and a broad range of different things that I don't necessarily have people within my own life or friends within my own life that are interested in those types of things. So being able to be online and post about different sorts of things that I'm up to hopefully reaches out to someone else who is also interested in those types of things, who will then sort of communicate with me on that sort of level, and we can have some sort of back and forth with that. I understand that anyone can be interested in anything, so if I'm interested in it, other people probably are as well. And I know for me being online, I like to see what other people are up to, and I often think, oh, I'm actually well aligned to that type of person, because they're someone who exercises every day. They go and drink a cup of coffee in the morning. They also like to read. They're also a photographer, all different things like this. So I know what personality traits and things that I have in common with other people, and we can sort of talk about that. So if I had a question, for example, about sort of running things, I'd message someone on Instagram who I know is also a runner. You know, if I had any questions about this podcast, I'd probably message someone else who had their own podcast. I wouldn't just message a random person and ask for advice on that, because they're not into that. So that's that sort of thing that I'm trying to create, some sort of group or some sort of connection with other people who have the same sort of interest with me. The other big thing is to really keep myself accountable. So I do post a lot of things online as a way to sort of keep myself accountable. For instance, I always post about this podcast. I don't just record this on my own as something to do by myself. If I was trying to keep this as a journal, as an audio journal for myself to look back on in 3 years, then there was no way I would actually have it out there in the world. I wouldn't have ever let you guys in on it, because if it was just for me, then there'd be no point putting it out there in the world. I do think it helps other people, and that is great as well, but it's also to keep me sort of accountable, in that I need to keep producing these episodes because people are out there expecting them. If I was just to say that I'm just going to record these and leave these on my hard drive for 3 years and look back on them then, I probably wouldn't have been as consistent with this as I have been, because there'd be no motivation and nothing sort of keeping me accountable to actually recording these episodes. So in a way, a lot of different things in my life are like that. So I sort of post about things to keep myself accountable, because I know that people will ask questions if I don't sort of do things. And if I'm not being as frequent with my exercise, for example, I know someone will sort of reach out and say something, and someone will ask me a question about it because they know it's something I'm interested in. So if I haven't done it in a while, they're probably going to start asking questions about that sort of stuff. It's really hard to keep yourself motivated on any different range of tasks that you want to do. Anything that you're trying to perform over a long period of time, it's hard to keep yourself accountable Even if you have the strongest of motivations for proceeding with that task, if you're not held accountable by other people, I think it's really tough to continue on with that. If you do everything in silence, it's very hard. And I know there are people out there who can do everything in silence and can continue working on without any reward or any sort of satisfaction from anyone else, because no one else actually knows about those types of things. And for that, that's great. If those people are out there, I'd love to know how you do that. But for me, a way that I've sort of found over the years to be able to continue on practices that I enjoy, like inherently enjoy, if we've come past that first step where I say that I enjoy it and it's something that I do for a reason of improving myself, how do I keep accountable with that is to then let other people in on it and let people know what it is I'm trying to do. So most of the time when I'm sort of letting people in on those types of things, it's to keep myself accountable. It was a really big thing with my running, for example, early last year when I started running for the first time. I really wasn't posting it anywhere. I really wasn't recording it on any apps or anything like that. I was just writing it down in my journal. And I sort of got to the end of the month and I was really struggling for motivation. And I saw other people posting online and I saw people posting about their runs and their sort of exercise routine. And that got me motivated by actually seeing them exercising as well. I was like, well, I can't be down in the dumps about it. I've got to pick myself back up again. If they're out there able to do it, then so can I. Let's keep going with this and see how we can get. It really didn't discourage me that they were 10 times better than me or that they were exercising every single day. I really wasn't looking at that. And the fact that they were a lot better than I was, I really didn't care about. But it was just the fact that they were able to get out there, because inherently I don't think anyone is more able than anyone else. I don't think that because they're out there every day, but this person has this going for them and that and the other. I think that if they can go do an hour a day, then I can at least walk out the front door and I can go do about 10 minutes. So that was a big motivator for me. So being able to put it out there in the world as well educated other people, and hopefully it's able to help other people. But also I get a lot of questions about it now because it's something that I post about my running all the time. So I get questions about it and people do keep me accountable on that. And that was one of the best things that I've done. And I think I'll continue to keep that up. Is that the best way to go about staying motivated with something? Probably not. But I know that it helps me in the here and now, and I know that it is improving me so that it is starting to get easier. And eventually, hopefully I don't need to do it anymore, but I still enjoy it because I enjoy keeping up with other people. So having that out there and having anything or any form of anything in my life out there in the world, I think is for that reason. But reflecting and saying where those things are, like if I'm reading a book on a Sunday, why do I need to post about that? No one... I'm not keeping myself accountable with that. Maybe if I end a book, I can post about it and say how much I enjoyed it, or people can ask me questions about it. But every time I sit down to read, I definitely don't need to be posting a photo of that, because that has been identified by me as being something that I only do because I'm trying to show myself as being more productive than I actually am. And so now we go back to the whole things of why we don't post things. We've spoken about why we do, but then why don't we post other things? Why don't I post about things that I haven't done successfully? I think I've done a good job over the past year of sort of explaining with exercise and that sort of stuff and why I'm unmotivated, and trying to be as real as possible with that it is a hard process for me and I don't find that easy. And I've really tried to communicate that a lot. But with other things like my sort of work schedule and things like that, I think I put out a lot of these exercises and practices that I do, but I don't necessarily come back with them if I don't get a positive result out of them. If I don't get the result that I wanted, I don't necessarily come back with that negative result, and I don't sort of show that, I haven't actually done this for the whole month. I haven't actually been as successful as I wanted to be with this. I haven't been as strong with this, that, and the other. So I think that is going to be something that I continue to do moving forward, or start to do moving forward, because in particular areas, I think that is helpful for other people. And I think that is a way that you can show that you are just like everyone else. I think only putting parts of yourself out there that are seen to be sort of perfect is never going to help you grow, because people have that sort of disconnect straight away. People can't relate to you because you seem to be someone who is always this sort of idea of perfection, idea of you're always being productive. And that has really hit me over the past sort of month, being able to get messages of other people asking how I'm so productive when to me I'm not. So clearly I'm portraying the wrong sort of message. And yes, I may be more productive than other people, but to me I'm not the ideal. I'm not the person that you would send a message to. I'm not as productive as other people that I see in my life who may be a lot more productive than I am. So having that and sort of reflecting on that has been really beneficial over the past week, and I think it will help me a lot going forward. And I think I can only improve on that when I'm really being honest with myself, but then being honest with everyone else, and sort of showing people how I do fail at things and how I'm not as productive as I may always seem to be. Now, I'm really sorry if that doesn't answer anyone's question who did actually send me a message, or if I have spoken to you over the past month. I'm sorry if that doesn't answer your question on how I am so productive. I will make an episode on that. I think there are definitely tricks that I have in place, like the one I spoke about earlier in the episode about being able to have that hour every day where I sit down and edit. There are definitely things that I put in place in my life to try and stay on track as much as I can and keep myself motivated and keep myself accountable within my own life. And there are definitely practices that I have like that. And I will definitely speak about those in future episodes because, as I said, that is something that I think will help other people. And I don't go through these experiments and I don't try things out just to be able to hold them for myself. I like to be able to share them with other people, but then I encourage people to actually try them in their own life because they may work for me, but they may not work for you. And so that is the best way to go about things. And it's the reason why I do a lot of things, because I hear about them off other people, try them out for a month, and then see where we go from there. If I don't enjoy it for the month, I won't continue it because I know that it's not beneficial for me, but it may have been for someone else. So that's probably where I'm going to leave today's episode, guys. I really hope you did enjoy this one and sort of gain a little bit out of it and hope it allows you to reflect on your own life, because we have become so used to only using social media as a highlight reel. I think it's been sort of bred into us and bred in through the actual app itself and the algorithm to things only perform well when they are those sort of success things, and people don't put the negatives out there, and people don't like to put the negatives out there. People don't like to show themselves in bad light. And I think whilst you don't have to show the really, really bad things, you can definitely show some bad things and things that you've made mistakes on before and things that aren't perfect, because at the end of the day, that is going to be the way that you can connect with more people. And hopefully through me trying this, I'll let you guys know, and hopefully you actually see some sort of change in this. If you don't, let me know, because it's going to be something that I'm actively trying to do more of over the next month and moving forward after that. So if you guys don't see a change, please actually keep me accountable to this and remind me of this episode that I recorded about this, because it is something that does tend to slip out of the mind when you're in the moment and you're thinking, oh, wow, I've just achieved this thing. But also remember to think about that when you actually do fail at something, and remember that it isn't all sunshine and rainbows, and there are negative things out there in the world that we should be educating other people on, not just the positive. So I hope you did gain something from this episode. If you did, I would really appreciate it if you guys shared it around. It's the one way that I do grow this podcast, really, is by you guys actually sharing this podcast around with friends and family. So I've gained a lot of new listeners through that, and a lot of people hitting me up and saying that they've actually enjoyed episodes. So I really appreciate that, and I appreciate anyone who shares this podcast with anyone, even through word of mouth, just by mentioning it to a friend. And if they listen to an episode and enjoy it, that would be great as well. So I'll leave it at that. I hope you guys have a great week. I hope this has given you something to think about, and I will speak to you all again next Monday. Bye.